And happy Friday afternoon. Punched in once again to South Dakota's most listened to political podcast. And we've got a very special episode this week, Jake. We've never done a show quite like this before.
It's definitely a first.
And so
in many ways.
We'll have to be a little less cocky and probably a little less funny this week.
We're dressed nicer. Usually wearing like sweats and a t-shirt from my home. My dog's sleeping below me. Yeah, this is a little different.
So we're trying to professional it up, but from Jake in the East and Murdoch in the West, this is South Dakota's most listened to political podcast, Dakota Town Hall, with quite the slate of guests this week.
Should we introduce them?
Let's get to it.
Yes, let's start with our good and new Governor, Larry Rhoden. Governor Rhoden, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks for coming on. Also, I want to say I think I've been what would kindly be called nudging to your staff to try to set this up exactly how I kind of wanted it, and they've been incredibly patient, so this is the time I should thank them as well.
Well, they're good people.
They're awesome to work with so far.
And, of course, we have returning guest, the most visited guest.
Yep.
And highly requested oftentimes for his brains and his smarts. It is our now Lieutenant Governor, Tony Venhuizen.
Good to be back with you.
Great to have you.
You have not been on since the Lieutenant Governor Ing.
Yeah, he doesn't care about us anymore. He just kind of,
That's how that goes.
Yeah, we got a bone to pick with you on that. You took our best guest.
That makes sense.
I told Ian I wanted to be back on, but he was slow walking you.
Sure, that happens. I get that. I will say this about bigger belt buckle than I thought I would meet with Ian. That was impressive.
Yeah.
I noticed no cowboy boots on Tony yet. You haven't got him into cowboy boots?
Well, no. He keeps asking me about them. I just refuse to let him wear boots.
Don't buy work boots. That's the mistake I did. Don't buy work boots. Ron Jeffries talked me into it, and I ended up getting drunk at the stock show, and I bought a nice pair of boots. And then I found out 9 months later, a Rio rancher was like, "Why are you wearing work boots? We're at a concert." Dang it! I bought the wrong pair.
What'd you call these shoes? You were disparaging my shoes when we were in Sioux Falls.
Sioux Falls loafers. Yeah, that's what I called them.
That line will come in handy on the 2026 campaign trail, probably.
Not gonna lie, I did change to a little more like not those before this started, so I wasn't wearing those when you came in here.
Well, let's do a show, guys.
Yes. Okay. We kind of want to start our conversation a little bit. You're definitely in a historical role. The first governor to ever move in during session into the role. We kind of want to ask, what was that like from your point of view, and what was it like to define your governorship?
Well, it was very interesting and challenging. Like you said, it was the first time in the history of the state that we did a transition during session. That coupled with the fact that we had a huge number of brand new legislators and 3 weeks into session, and then not knowing when that transition would take place, when the governor would resign, the former governor would resign, and I would actually fulfill that role. But it went very well, and that was thanks to a lot of people that were working to prepare for the unexpected. And so when it finally did happen, the week Christie was voted on Saturday, and then on Monday I took the oath of office. Tuesday I did a joint address. Wednesday picked Tony as my running mate. Thursday, which was the last day of that legislative week, they had confirmation hearings and a floor vote, and so we had it all wrapped up in 4 days.
That's fast.
Grab the bull by the horns there. I mean, that's as fast as it gets.
Yeah, it was good process, and we had a lot of people working to. The legislature, typically in those kind of circumstances, would no doubt suspend the rules in order to get it all done. But we had the process nailed down to where they didn't have to suspend the rules, and went very smoothly. And then, of course, Tony got a unanimous vote in his confirmation from both chambers, which I thought was
Do you have to
kind
wrangle
of a cherry
anybody?
on top.
Do you have to wrangle anybody for a holdout?
Yeah, well, no.
I almost had a great answer there.
I really never expected it to be unanimous. That was very surprising.
You thought maybe Mort would vote no or something?
Right.
Yeah.
Funny Casey holdout.
Matt Roby told me he thought about it because I talked him into running, and he got up on the House floor and felt like this was just a huge bait and switch.
I mean, we want to get to the tour, but maybe let's stick on this a little bit. Do you mind if we ask kind of bluntly, like, why Tony? While I don't mean to do it while he's in the room here, but like, why? And I don't mean why Tony? You know.
Well, it doesn't hurt me to say nice things about him.
Let me ask it this way. Hard not to think there's not a slew of great candidates who could do that. And Tony, one of them we agree with on this show. We're huge fans. But, like, how do you narrow it down to that one person?
Yeah, it was extremely interesting and very encouraging. There was, I think, 40-some people that had expressed interest in being my running mate, and very, very qualified people, a number of them in there, and people that I'd thought a great deal about. Kind of had my set of boxes to check as far as what I needed in a lieutenant governor. And, of course, those boxes at the top were bigger than the boxes as you went farther down the list. And
Cowboy Boots was really low on the list, apparently.
Yeah.
Sioux Falls Loafers got a real small little circle at the bottom of the legal pad.
Footnote. So, and then in one of the top huge big boxes, or a couple of them, is, first of all, somebody with integrity. Another huge box is their abilities, their talents, their ability to know the legislative process and be able to fill that role, step into a role where they're presiding over the Senate. But at the end of the day, I had the luxury of working with Tony for 20-some years. When I was the first new legislator, he was I think he was an intern at the time, and then
for Mike Rounds, yeah.
For Mike Rounds, and then was
Haven't been able to get rid of him.
Student regent, and then worked for
You were regent? I didn't
Dennis Dugard, and then with Christie, he was part of our transition, became chief of staff for a couple of years, and through that whole time, my respect for him grew, and what he brought to the table. So at the end of the day, it was a pretty easy call, actually, after having a lot of time to ponder it.
So a lot of people, the word coming floated around a lot, I feel like, is reset with your governorship so far. A lot of resetting kind of where we are with whether it's tribal relations or whether it's the prison or whatever it is. When you kind of got the job and you got a slate of things that, you got Nome's budget handed down to you, what were kind of your first thoughts? Where were you going to start with your legislation? What were you thinking with that kind of reset idea?
Well, the reset was really, a lot of that was set in motion, in the first few weeks. In fact, in a recent article, I thought was really kind of a distortion of the reset, because that I think it was a week before the right after the State of the State address, we met with tribes, Governor Nome and me. She was still governor, and it was there that Christie herself talked about resetting with the tribes, and then a week later, when the tribal chairman that was there repeated that in his State of the Tribe address, and then a week after that, or 2 weeks after that, when I did my inaugural address, I repeated what he had repeated from Governor Nome on the reset. So, the reset was not a new to my administration, although it did, it really was appropriate in a lot of areas. When we talked about resetting with the press and resetting with legislators, we have a new crop of legislators, and then of course when we couldn't get the prisons across the finish line, I thought, here again, and just because of the cards that are dealt us, we need to reset on that. And
we actually,
I have kind of the unusual experience of having worked in one way or another on 4 gubernatorial transitions.
Oh, that's a good point, yeah.
I was working for Mike Rounds when he was governor-elect. I worked for Dennis when he was governor-elect. I was on Christie's transition team with Larry. And then now this one, of course, I kind of came in as they were transitioning in. I was in the legislature. But the reset is something that any new governor does, and a lot of it is just about style, really.
Yeah.
And you think about, what major policy change has Governor Rhoden made that as a departure from Governor Noem? I can't really think of one, right? I mean, we took on the property tax issue. That was something that was going to happen this year either way.
And was going to be a continuing
And was
conversation
going to be a continuing
no matter
conversation. And, of course, he has as much experience on property tax as anybody, so maybe his approach was a little different. So who knows? The prison issue was going to be a problem this session regardless because the votes just weren't there.
We actually talked about this to defend your point a little. We talked about this last week on the show, was that it's Governor Noem that actually started the prison conversation.
Absolutely.
That, and that wasn't a new problem. That was a problem
And the
for
only reason
governors and governors.
I'm chairing this task force, and we are even though it's going to be tricky to figure out a plan that everyone can agree to, Governor Noem was so wise to set all this money aside. Almost $600 million, and then this year, a little more. And so, we have a lot more options on the table because we have all this cash set aside for this purpose. So, I think the reset. I read that article too, and it was really overstating the case. I thought a lot of this is just about style and personality.
Well, and we had Tupper on last week, and he was the author of this article, and I think even he would maybe say that was maybe less, more about what Governor Noem than maybe more about Governor Rhoden, I think, which probably doesn't help the argument that you guys are trying to make one way or the other. But I think the public sees a difference. Style would be the way to say it. Just style for the time.
I am glad you kept the veto brand, though. I'm glad that got to stick around.
I had to make a new one.
Yeah.
The governor took the one that I'd made
That's
for
fair.
her. She
Yeah.
took that with her. So I made a smaller, kinder, gentler veto iron.
Easier to wield.
Well, the first one was a little.
It's a little unruly. It's great for the camera.
Well, yeah, it was a little bit awkward. I think I watched her do that several times, and it was a little bit awkward to actually use because it was so big. This one is, I think, a better size for the purpose.
Yes, I had to I had to reset with my
Do you get a fire?
veto
Do you get,
new veto iron a little bit.
Did you get a little fire going in the office to heat it up, or what do you take it
Is it
outside
ink
with a
or
blowtorch?
is it ink or is it like embers you're using to stamp it? What do you stamp?
Ink.
It's ink. Okay, good.
Ink,
I was
yes.
a little worried. It could
Yeah,
burn the
it's just
Capitol down.
like a red ink pad.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
you guys have been on the tour. You're seeing every inch of South Dakota lately. What's most importantly, what have been in the top-notch places to eat lately? It's usually what I want to know when I'm talking to people. Yeah, any restaurants around the state knock you out?
Well, we don't have that many opportunities. Once a day. Today we were at Sicky's.
Sicky's
Sicky's.
Garage out by the
Out in
mall.
Rapid, yeah.
That was a first for me, so that was good. But no, we've been around.
Suppose you're
this-
there to work. You're not there to leisurely lunch
Well,
like on my schedule might be.
The one that probably made the biggest impression on me, and it wasn't really lunch, but we went to the Steel District in Sioux Falls.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And they have, I think, 3 restaurants open in there already and another one
Yep.
coming. But they'd give us a tour of that whole
It's impressive.
development. But in each restaurant, then they had kind of samples set out.
Oh, that was cool.
So we went in the
Chef Louis and all those setups.
Yeah,
doing the
so
deal.
we went
That's
in
rad.
the Mexican place, Dahlia or whatever it is, and they had
Iron
these
and
little
Oaks down
escanadas
there.
and different things. And then the steakhouse was our favorite.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice
had-
place.
With ribeye New York strip and the
Wagyu.
Wagyu.
Oh.
Governor of South Dakota eating Wagyu beef. It's a brand new time and day and time, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Well, I'm not big on Wagyu.
No, it's funny you say because he said that to me as we were walking out that he thinks Wagyu is kind of
It's good marketing.
oversold.
Yeah.
Yeah, great marketing.
So how's this tour been? You've been all over the place. What have you guys been doing?
Yeah, well, this is the second week, just wrapping up our second week of our Open for Opportunities tour. And we started out in Sioux Falls. We've been in Sioux Falls and Aberdeen and
Begrudgingly stopped in Watertown. I noticed.
Watertown yesterday.
was a
Before
great
that,
stop.
we were in Spearfish and Belfouche and Pier. What am I missing? Mitchell
And then Rapid City today.
and Rapid City.
So do you
Ellsworth
stop at
today?
manufacturing places? Do you stop at what are the types of businesses you're stopping to visit at?
Well, like in Sioux Falls, the first day we stopped at Silencer Central. Up in Watertown, we were at
Terex.
Terex.
Oh sure.
And today we were out at Ellsworth, did a tour of Ellsworth, and then what's the welding?
Is it VSR?
Of course, you want to stop at every welder in the state,
Well,
don't you?
yeah. We went to a lot of plants, and
We're a little heavy on the
You're
welding.
on the welding, are you? Wonder why.
Yeah.
but yeah,
Can you imagine being a welder and you're there and the governor stops by and he knows a lot about welding and now you got to try to, get your lines right in front of you? That's probably a little nerve-wracking.
well,
I
the
just like it
places-
was VRC today. Was the
VRC, yeah.
VRC Metal Systems.
Right,
Oh, yeah,
right.
they're a great place.
No, that's high tech.
It
high
is.
tech welding there. So that was very interesting for somebody like me. But it's been a great opportunity, though. I'm blown away every time we go to another town, and the businesses that I had no idea existed in South Dakota.
Sure.
And then to have the opportunity to visit with the the management and the employees, and just business people from all across the state and their customers, and the kind of information that you can glean from those conversations and the problems that they're facing, what their hindrances that they see to opportunity in South Dakota, and what we can do to get out of their way as a state government, or help provide them some help.
Is there a common theme that you see in every? Is there one common problem or one common it'd be great if this would happen across any business one way or the other?
Not really. I think there's a common theme that's been extremely encouraging to me, is the excitement of especially these people that have moved here in recent years, and to see just their gratitude for a place like South Dakota to move a business to. And that's extremely encouraging to me, and I think it should be at all South Dakotans. We do a lot of things right in South Dakota, and I think as native South Dakotans, sometimes we take a lot of them for granted.
Sure.
And so it's kind of a
You
good
see that when you
refresher
travel
course.
other places, you're like,
Yeah.
oh man, that is.
Yeah.
I was in D.C. for a week, and there's so many things that are the norm there that if you think about it here, would be like, I wouldn't even. That's not gonna work here.
Yeah.
Well, it's just fun. I remember Governor Dugard always used to say, he always thought it was fun that when you're the governor, you can go just about anywhere and tour just about anything, and they're happy to see you.
That's a good point.
There's a lot of these places.
Yeah.
Why would you ever go in Terex or Trail King or this place today? Why would you? You'd never go to these places. Why would you? But you get to go in there. You get to see what they're doing. They show you all the cool stuff they're doing. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Anything you've learned where it's like, oh, I couldn't do that for a living?
Well, for me, it's just about everywhere.
Not with those shoes on, yeah.
I say, Larry, we've been worried a few times that he was going to apply for a job. But
Well, we lost the governor to VRC Metal Systems. He's really excited about his
that
new
could work out okay
opportunity.
for me now that I think
that
about
would be. You got to start dusting off his resume a little.
We were visiting a high tech. Where were we at? Where they had the robot snow plows.
Oh, that was at Lake Area Tech.
Lake Area
Handy.
Tech.
Wow.
And Tony piped up. He thought that was right up his
I'm
alley.
right with you. I think that's wonderful.
We'd seen the treadmill desk earlier. I said, I'm not doing that.
Put
But
a
then when we
robot
got
on
to
that.
the robot snowblower, I'm like, this is what I
Up
need.
your
There's a little
alley.
remote control. You can sit in your.
We went through that treadmill desk phase there for a while. That and
No.
the standing desk. That,
A lot of-
They
that
never
fad,
last.
That
I
fad
told-
came and
never
went with
I
last.
told
us.
the governor, a lot of people die on treadmills.
Andrew, we don't want to ruin the insurance policy.
No, it's not going to happen to me.
So, how many weeks did we get into the session before you had to veto something?
Well, let's see. I think we were into session 3 weeks before I became governor. Is that right?
That sounds about right.
It was the third week.
And so we would have been into the 4th week, fifth, probably.
Wasn't that veto the 8th week, maybe?
Yeah, I would guess.
So made it a while, past crossover.
You got a month.
and
You got a month
Got a
before
month.
that.
Got a month under your belt.
Yeah, for a while I was thinking maybe it'd be another year when we didn't have a veto.
Because I know this veto, we'll call it the daycare or childcare veto. That one surprised me. I didn't see it coming. So what was your thought process, and where did you come down saying, you know what, I'm going to veto this bill?
Yeah, well, there was a couple things to consider. First of all, that program was, there's a finite amount of money in the program that we're talking about to give assistance for people for child care, and it was to low income. And what the bill did quite simply was take money away from the low income and give it to higher income South Dakotans with that program.
That's the jump the line argument that I hear.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And from that perspective, and I think that coupled with the fact that we have done a great deal in the state to address that problem, and we'll continue to work on addressing the child care shortage. And so I just thought that was a ill-conceived idea where you're not adding to that pool of money and diluting the ability of the people that really need the assistance to get it.
As with any veto, there's people that are on the side of it and people that would, I'm sure they start writing their opinion pieces the second the veto brand, comes out. The common group I saw around the state, and this could be to either of you, is the economic development groups around the state seem to be the ones that were really trying to lead the charge. And oftentimes you don't see that group connected on a thing. They're trying to get businesses in their own areas, and they likely see each other as competition of sorts when they're trying to get here. But this seemed to be one thing they were all on the same page on.
I think those, and we met with and talked to some of those guys. They see this as a challenge for their, it's a workforce challenge that you have a child care issue.
Yeah,
and we know that. It seemed to me like there was a desire on their part to try to do something, and this bill was the something.
There's something.
Yep.
And so this was the horse they were riding, and they wanted to be able to say they did something, and I appreciate that. But as the governor said, it was a little bit ill-conceived. If there wasn't funding for this new group of recipients, and so now it's a zero-sum game with the people getting it now
on a budget year.
Yeah,
tight budget year. Yeah.
Anyhow,
right.
Is there a natural go forward now that we're through a session and summer studies have been planned on this issue specifically? Is there a here's what we think 2026, 2028 could look like
On childcare?
Yeah.
Of all the issues that came up since I've been a legislator, this is maybe the one where the answer is the least obvious to me. And you just have the problem of you don't have enough child care slots. You don't have enough people working. You can set up more places, but then you don't have workforce.
It's a pure bodies thing, basically.
Yeah, and you say, well, pay more. Well, if you pay more, then you're driving the cost up to the point where the people who need it can't afford it. I'm not aware of any state in the country that's figured this out. And we haven't either. I don't know if it's really something that state government can solve. It's a frustrating issue. I don't have an answer for it.
What I think, it's typical of government. We're always looking for solutions from the government. I think maybe the big picture solution is to grow our economy, and that's what we've done in South Dakota, and keep government out of the way. The business community, a thriving business community, will figure out the child care. But if we can grow our economy, at the same time in South Dakota, we've invested in the last 5 years, we've invested over $500 million in rural broadband. When you think about that and what that means to our economy and our potential for future growth, if you can create a business in, back in your living room in Riva, South Dakota, or in Puckwana, and you could provide an opportunity for a second income and have one of the parents stay at home and eliminate the need for child care. Those are the type of things that government can focus on and really make a difference.
You see some plans like the Tri Plan or Tri Share. There's a couple of different names for them where the private business and maybe the economic development group of the community. Elevate had one of these that I'm noted they've been working on some pilot programs where if the company and the Elevate and then maybe take some of that federal funding that's available and try to make that stretch further. But I don't think I've seen any one community really land at home.
No, when we were in Watertown the other day, up at the Harmony Hill development up there, they're actually opening a child care center there, and that was an example of I think they said there was a large provider that was going to be shutting down, and they set up a new nonprofit and got a board together and raised a couple $1 million in the community, and they're getting it rolling. And there are partnerships like that you see happen in these towns when people get together and pull on it. But
yeah, I think so too.
Murdoch, you had a question about solar panels.
A little, but it's tied to the. I mean, it's all. There was is it Walworth County? Is that where Akaska is? South of Mobridge there? I want to make sure I have the county right. But the county commissioners of sorts, there's a landowner there that wanted to put solar panels on, and the Walworth County commissioners kind of shut it down. And without getting into that specific argument at all, it reminded me of every large-scale funding project we have on the state, be it pipelines, be it prison. We need a move forward mechanism. And to your point of the government might not be the solution of it, but is unfortunately stuck in so many conversations about pipelines and energies and prisons. How do you, like, in the same instance of how does a county commission tell a private rancher where and where cannot go on a project that might be good for all of the county? Where are the next steps on these large funding projects?
We see with data centers too, for example.
Data centers is a goofy example of it, right? Like, how do we get together on something like the prison? And or
my first comment is, if we have a county commission that's just turning away development, I sure hope they don't come to the Capitol and complain about their property taxes.
That's an interesting pivot.
Honestly, all these counties who say they don't have enough money, well, then don't chase away development. And it's not all the counties are doing this, but some of them are.
Some of them are.
And what's very frustrating to me is counties are supposed to have a zoning plan. And they have a plan and they have rules, and you're supposed to know going in what the rules are and what's acceptable. And then sometimes it'll happen that they just don't follow it. Somebody comes in and is ready to go and has a site, and then the commission gets pressure from the neighbors or whatever, and they don't follow it. And that happens too much, and you start to get a reputation, and people don't look to you anymore because they say, oh, South Dakota, it's too hard to develop there.
Because there's certainly an undertone of kind of that, not in my backyard. Let's say NIMBY, is that what they call it? Not in my backyard going on, right? How do you say, hey, we want to develop these areas and, reduce property taxes?
Well, I was trying to, what was it, 3 years ago, we had this bill on
citing ag projects.
Citing ag projects, and we got those passed that standardized some of the language statewide to prohibit some of these projects from frivolous lawsuits, and gave a more standard blueprint of what the counties would make the decisions on, and then it's just check the boxes if you want to develop your land. And I think that moved the needle quite a ways in the right direction, but we continue to see some of those issues popping up.
Well, it's just interesting because you have property rights. You have a certain group who's very focused on property rights, but then now they want the county to be able to tell you what you can and can't do with your own property.
That is,
right?
I think, the same let's put a prison spin on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the whole state's looking to you guys on prison, on what next possible steps that are tangible and could be. So we're not talking about this again in 2032.
So what are those next steps? I mean, you have the prison reset. Is that project prison reset? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep. What's that going to look like, and what are you hoping at the end of the day get out of that?
Well, what I told the task force was, the governor's direction to me was, all the cards are on the table. We're taking a fresh look at this. We spent 4 years putting a plan together. I think it was a good plan. We had the money to pay for it. We have a site that makes sense. Yeah, there's some of the neighbors who don't like it. That'll happen
everywhere.
I would think, no matter where you go.
Yeah.
And so this isn't to discount the plan that we have, other than to say we don't have the votes to pass it. And so, okay,
that's fair.
We have a lot of new legislators. We have a lot of people who came into this process partway through. Let's just start back at square one. So we're doing an entirely new report with a different consultant. We're going to do an RFI for locations. If anybody I've had a couple communities tell me that
Or do you mind?
requests for information.
Okay.
Just basically asking for people to submit if they'd like to be considered as a site. I've had some community leaders in different places tell me they're thinking about submitting for that. We will consider the Lincoln County site. In fact, it was on the task force agenda to go tour that site. But we're going to do a fresh look at what are our needs and what's the condition of these facilities, and we'll see where it leads us. I hope where it leads us is to a plan that the people on that group can support, at least almost all of them. Maybe it won't be a unanimous vote, but I don't want to do something that's a 12-10 vote either.
Right.
You know?
That's where we're stuck a little.
Because then we've got 15 legislators on there, and they basically split down the middle on if they were for it or against it. One or two are a little bit back and forth, maybe. If the 7 or so who oppose the old plan also oppose whatever new plan we come up with, then we're not going to have the votes to pass that either. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're trying to do here.
Well, and you have to keep in mind it requires a 2/3 majority vote to make it happen.
Why is that? What part of this makes it 2/3?
Well, the appropriation.
Okay.
Because we have, even though we have the money, or most of the money, $600 million plus, that was the initial vote would have been in order to appropriate that money and start spending it on the prison. That is an appropriation requires 2/3 majority.
Well, I think you and Governor Noem deserve a lot of credit too. I mean, this prison wasn't built last century. It was built a century before that, and for like 50 years we needed a new prison. So and it's like the least popular thing to do is build a prison.
It's not funny. It's so funny because it's how true it is.
Because no one runs for office going, I want to build a new prison. Like that's not. And so credit to you guys, really for that's a big lift to take on.
When I was working for Governor Dugard, we talked about the fact that we'd eventually have to do this. We never even had 10% of the money we would have needed to do this. Christie was so smart to take that huge, and you could have done a lot of things that would have been a lot more fun and more popular with $600 million. He was very smart to set this amount of money aside. So
if
that
you ever
we've never had that amount of money in the history of the state, and I don't know if we ever will again.
I'm just saying, even if you find another $600 million and you're looking for fun things we can do with it, I wouldn't mind an email. We could have a little fun.
Hey, that sculpture park out near Mount Rushmore. I like it. I think it's really fun. I think it's great. I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting.
That shouldn't cost $600 million.
I hope not.
I want to chime in though, just to bring this back to the reality where we're at, and the fact that we have this opportunity because, and it was kind of ironic because the legislators made a lot of flap about the Department of Corrections changing their name to Department of Correction and Rehabilitation.
Yes.
And about tipped me over because they were also raising a fuss about the amount of money we're spending on the new prison, and that it was going to cost more per year to run it. And I'm trying to hold their face in my hands and say, yeah, that's because we're going to have classrooms and rehabilitation classes.
Yes.
And end this revolving door of people being warehoused, incarcerated instead of rehabilitated, and then the revolving door of coming back in. So we're this close to getting this done, and now we had to push the reset button. But I think it's important for people to step back and remember just how important it is, especially for the humanity of the people represented in those prisons.
I think it ties into the open for opportunity tour you're on. And it's no one, you think about the people that are housed in that prison, they're just South Dakotans. Mm-hmm. Full stop, right? It needs to be a part of the system.
They're human beings.
They're human beings. And if they're retrained and if there's rehabilitations, they get jobs, they pay taxes, they buy houses, they don't, it's an investment. But it's a harder pitch to make to people when it's a prison,
Right, because they become your neighbors or your friends' neighbors, and you want that person next to you to have a good job and to be part of our economy and our society. So it's difficult.
Actually,
I don't envy you guys
for bringing that up.
That position.
Hey, make your Sturgis Rally tax joke with the Meade County governor in the room, would you?
I can finally pitch this.
Yeah,
this is why I can pitch this.
Go pitch it away,
all right,
will you?
Okay, so property taxes. I don't know if you heard. A lot of people, I don't like how high they are. I don't know if you heard that. if for 2 weeks in August, we draw a circle around Sturgis, tax them at 100%, problem solved.
Okay.
Yeah?
Well, there's actually, I won't get into it, but there's actually laws on the books that allow some of that.
Hey, there we go.
Come on now. No, you're supposed to, we're going to get on the highway and rev our motorcycles up and defend that.
That's a green light right there.
Green light. All right. We were talking, you had two kind of major vetoes that made the news, Governor Rhoden, and the second one was, we were trying to find an easy way to describe it as what the topic is. Would it be constitutional processes?
Citizen initiative.
Yeah.
Initiative reform.
Initiative reform.
There we go. There's an easy way of saying it.
You vetoed initiative reform. Proponents would say they're trying to make it a more fair representation of a more accurate snapshot of the citizens of South Dakota, I think. Is that's what the proponents would say?
Yep.
But you vetoed that.
I did. Yeah, and with good reason. I mean, I understand the motivation, and I agree. I think it should be more difficult to change our Constitution. And there's ways to do that. I've said in my veto message that I favor a piece of initiated measure that's on the ballot. It was House Joint Resolution 5003 that requires a 60% vote on a constitutional amendment. But there are a number of things wrong with 1169 and why I vetoed it. And 4 main issues. First of all, when I took my oath of office, it was 2 sentences. I swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and I swore to uphold the Constitution of the state of South Dakota. I think first 2 reasons that I think this bill is flawed, I think it stands in violation of both the U.S. Constitution and
just as it's written.
Just as it's written. In the Eighth Circuit federal court, which includes South Dakota, they've taken a very strict view on messing with petitions to make it extremely difficult to carry petitions. Mm-hmm. And on that line alone, I think they'll find this in violation of that. In the state constitution, it spells out that in order to change the Constitution, it takes to put something on the ballot, it takes 10% of the voters from the previous election, period. So it spells it out in the Constitution. What 1169 is trying to do is amend the Constitution in statute. It's very, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems very unlikely that the Supreme Court in the state of South Dakota would agree that it's appropriate to try and dink with the language in the Constitution by amending statute. And so that's 2 of the reasons. Another reason, and just from a practical standpoint, I got a call from a very, very conservative person. I won't say her name, but was urging a veto because she's carried petitions. And she understands just from a practical standpoint. And what I told my team when I was talking about it, if you have to have 35 petitions, because you have to have one for each Senate district, and here's another from a practical standpoint. You walk out in the street and you ask 10 people what district they live in.
No one knows.
How many of them do you think will tell you?
Yep.
So now you have 35 petitions you're carrying, and you get somebody who wants to sign your petition. You say, well, what district? Well, I don't know. So first they have to find out what district. Then he has to sort through his 35 petitions and get him to sign the right one. You don't think that's over?
Then you got to find enough of those people to stand everywhere in the state now.
Yep.
And there's not a deep bench of the, everybody's talked to the person who's asked them to sign a petition in the last 18 months. There's not 24 more of those people.
And it makes it very, very, very expensive.
That's what it is.
So
it costs $3
So what
million
I've said on a practical side, if you're an out-of-state dark money billionaire group, you just write a bigger check. And it's still possible for you to have the kind of resources to do it. If you're a grassroots in-state organizations, it's impossible.
Can't make it now.
So we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, cutting our own throats on a deal like this. Also, one other thing, if you think about it, now one senatorial district would have veto power over the other 34. And is that really a system that we want?
It's Liz May's dream. Sorry, I said I wasn't gonna make any jokes. That's what that it would, or if you think about a Sioux Falls senator that has no grasp on West River, water rights, ranching rights, hay rights, whatever it is, right? Like who knows if that would make a constitutional amendment, but it's a two-way street.
Other than that, I have no opinion.
I think it's a very good veto. I think that was a good use of your brand.
Well,
we were disappointed because I don't know if the governor was disappointed. I was disappointed because there was this bill that was going to move the brand board away from the governor's authority.
remember this.
And I thought that was a great candidate for the first veto.
This
had
close.
Be more fitting.
For Governor Rhoden, we got the branding iron. We were all ready to go, and then it was killed in the Senate committee, I think.
Tony had the ink out. He was ready to go.
Yeah,
I
had mixed emotions about that too. I thought that would have been pretty apropos.
Okay, so how are you guys feeling about the property tax reform we saw after the session? It was there was a lot of different options. We came down to basically capping it for 5 years. Is that correct? At 3%.
Yes.
Am I watering down a little much, or is that pretty accurate?
That was the main thrust of Senate Bill 216. It also capped growth, the county's growth to, as a result of new construction, to 3%. We had it down to
It was
2%, and the compromise we made at the end of the day with the House to raise it to 3%, and it also raised the limits on the on their discount or their assessment freeze program, the wage requirement, total wage requirement, and the value of the house. So it did a number of things and to cap that growth. Beyond that, that was the only legislation I think out of 15 bills that actually made it to the finish line. But beyond that, we're going to here shortly hand over an idea for more appropriate, more aggressive tax cuts potential for individual counties, and we're still trying to kind of nail down, just a basic concept to turn over to the legislative task force for them then to massage and put their fingerprints on and do the due diligence as far as looking into models and testing it out.
So I guess are you feeling more? I mean, we've had four of the last 5 years we've had summer studies on property taxes. Are you feeling more confident in this go around that we have a solution that's going to work for people?
Well, yeah, a lot of times you think build it and they'll come. I mean, you have a summer study and you'll think of something, and too often I've said a few times that I think it's like quoting the good book according to Larry, where it says, "For God so loved the world that He didn't send a summer study." But a lot of times they're kind of notorious for not producing anything. But in this case, I think they've got some good people on that committee, and if you can present them some concepts for things that can really present a viable option, I think it might be valuable.
I think the same applies for this ever-moving, ever-hard-to-solve eminent domain issue, right? Like it eventually, because you can't stop having summer studies, even though everyone wants to drag on the summer studies.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's got to think of something eventually, and these are the leaders, and these are the one. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm a believer in the summer studies. I think people are too hard on them.
You bring up the point of eminent domain. I want to touch it really briefly. I think you should be commended for signing that bill. Actually, the bill that kind of ended eminent domain. I can't say words for the carbon pipelines. I think the reality is the book on that is closed, or the war on that's over, and you close the book. I think that's a very important thing for the Republican Party too, to get over this issue and come back together on a lot of things. So I some people give you a lot of grief for that. I think at the end of the day, it was a good decision, and it'll be good for South Dakota as a whole.
Yeah, it's a tough discussion, and I hated it from day one because it clouded. There was so much involved, whether from the eminent domain. The discussions got so murked up with the different the different subjects it contained.
And heated and personal, and
Heated and personal, and I remember a guy scream at me on the phone that and he was a good friend of mine, and telling me when I was trying to explain him a year ago what Senate Bill 201 did, because I
wasn't
don't care.
eminent domain.
It had nothing to do with eminent domain.
Not one.
Not one, and it truly was a lot of landowner Bill of Rights. But that aside, when I was trying to explain it to them, they were so convinced that this was all about climate change.
Entrenched.
Yeah. And he says, I don't care if you sport a 201, you're nothing but a Biden-loving liberal, Green New Deal liberal. And I'm like,
Larry doesn't get called that very often.
and he doesn't like it very much.
Well, I think it's important. We saw a statewide voter-led initiative to take down 201, which made voters made their voice very loud. So I think closing the book was important. I think at that point, it's good to move on from this issue.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if it resets it to be able to ask this question, meaning they're not, I don't think they're that tied together, but they're a little connected. So like, what's the best way to grow? What's the biggest barrier to growth in South Dakota right now?
That's an easy question.
I don't know if it's that, right? I don't know if it is that.
I think
Maybe it is.
It's still probably workforce.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have 1.9% unemployment, lowest in the nation, lowest in the history of the nation. You know, we set a new record, I think, about a year ago, but we're still the lowest, and we have like 20,000 open jobs. So workforce, I think, is obviously the right answer.
And we were just visiting with a guy the other day. We have 20,000 or so open jobs, and then we have jobs that aren't even. I mean, there are places that would expand if they thought they could hire.
Sure.
So they're kind of on ice, but there could be another 10,000 jobs above that if the people were there.
Sure.
Yeah, that's right. He was using because I questioned him on it. He was using a 30,000 number, but they were factoring in the businesses that would take on more employees if they were available.
Well, Governor, earlier in the show, we were asking you why you picked Tony as lieutenant governor, and you referred to him as your running mate when he said that. that makes a guy think. That makes a guy think about 2026 a little bit.
Well,
So-
I didn't catch that. I guess.
We had Marty was on our KBHB station a couple weeks back, and he was pretty bold about it. He said a couple things I thought were interesting. First, he was like, Dusty's running. People are openly running for this. It doesn't need to be that much of a secret. I'm leaning on his words a little, I'm sure. But the other thing he made that I thought was insightful is you guys largely have similar camps, and you're both what would be West River candidates were that be the case, and it would make sense for that camp to be in the same camp. But he also was the first one to say, right now, I work for Larry. I'm Larry's lawyer, So it was an interesting, not quite setup to what 2026 is going to be, but almost a setup.
Well, keep
to
talking.
2026.
I'm garnering information here.
I'll ask it in the sense of this way. You can't, obviously, no one's going to say, well, you bet I'm running, and here's my announcement. But what are the factors that would weigh on you on whether you would run or not run, if I can ask it that way?
Oh, yeah, that's a fair question. I think in my years, I think I run if I feel like if I truly feel I'm called to run, and there's a lot of ways to determine that. And every decision I've made, I've done it with the consultation of obviously my wife and my family. And I remember an old guy told me once, and it might sound kind of corny, but I kind of hung on to it, that the office should seek the man, and I don't even know for sure what that means, but I kind of think, when I get a lot of people that'll come up unsolicited and are encouraging me and asking me about it and offering support, and that means a great deal to me as far as influencing that. So my wife and I are very strongly considering. I know we have to make that decision very shortly, and we're still talking to our family, praying about it, and but I think we'll make a decision here within the next few weeks.
Okay. Well, that'd be sooner than I think we would if we were putting bets on it, which we do all the time when you guys aren't in the room. I would be sooner than we would prognosticate, probably.
Yeah.
You mentioned your wife. I've actually got to know Sandy. She's always doing events and stuff. Your wife's a wonderful campaign wife. I always get to sit in the back with the wives and make jokes a little bit. So she's always fun to sit in the back with. How's the transition been for her?
Yeah, she liking the job?
Oh, yeah, I think so. In fact, she isn't with me today. She just got back from Oklahoma last night. I talked to her, just went to bed, and they had a First Ladies Conference in Oklahoma City, and she went down there for a couple days, and she is. I really think Sandy's going to be a great First Lady, just because of she's been so active in the community and an organizer, been part of a number of different groups and Federation Republican Women. She really helped kind of bring it back years ago from where it was.
Right now, if it wasn't for the South Dakota Republican Women, the Republican Party wouldn't have a mechanism to get together and have Jell-O salad once. Not once. You couldn't get 7 people together if they weren't there doing their thing.
Yep. I know she's having a great time, and she's going to do a great job for me.
How's the mansion? Moving to the mansion, how was that?
Oh, really, I really do enjoy it. It's very comfortable.
Yeah,
there, and so it's been.
Did you bring in some welding stuff?
It's your fun. That's funny because I was considering that for a while.
Kick that media center out, put a shop in the back.
Yeah. Well, the former governor had an exercise room, and I think been more appropriate as a shop.
Lieutenant Governor, my question to you: our favorite Venhuizen is Henry. He has been for
Yes.
a number of years. Do you get he knows so much of this? Do you get notes from him? Do you getting advice?
Yes. And,
Yes, he says.
from all the kids. I have a lot of stories I could tell you.
I bet they're just soaking it up, aren't they?
Well, Sarah was telling me one night, this is while I was in Pierre, and I think you had just asked me to be lieutenant governor, but we hadn't announced it yet, and we hadn't told the kids yet, because we knew the second we told, that the secret's would be out. Right. So Sarah told me I was in Pierre, so they were having dinner at home, and they were talking about this, and Henry says, well, I don't think Dad is the pick, because I asked him if Larry had talked to him about it, and he told me that he hadn't, and if he was going to be the pick, Larry would have talked to him about it. And then Elizabeth says, well, maybe Larry did talk to him, and he just didn't tell us because Madeline is such a blabbermouth.
Leaks from everywhere.
Yeah,
you don't know where
Joe
the leaks
Sneevy's
are coming
was
from.
trailing your
Right.
kids trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Right, well, he should have been. Paul Tenhaken visited Madeline's class around that time, and he let each kid ask one question. And her question, this is like the first or second week of session, her question to the mayor was, and he knows who she is. They've met before. Mayor, who do you think the lieutenant governor is going to be? And Paul just kind of looked at her and said, I don't know, Madeline. Who do you think the lieutenant governor is going to be? And her guess was Russ Olson.
That was our guess. That was our guess.
Educated children.
Right? Yeah. She did not pick me. That was the real vote of confidence.
Tony's kids sound just like us, but it's at recess, right? Like, it'll never be Westra. It'll never be Luke.
Right.
That's funny.
There is also a funny scene in my head of Tony editing his book and adding his name in there, like, oh, there's me, like in your book.
Do you have to bring in a ghostwriter to write about yourself?
No, because
Scandal.
it's really just a list. There's nothing really. It's just who the lieutenant governor is. There's not a lot of content.
A little bit more this time around, right?
I did have to write a new chapter about Larry, so we do have a new edition available.
We do. We have to eventually do an episode.
Right. Yeah.
You guys, you remember, early on in the process when I don't know who was interviewing Tony, and I read the article the next day, and this was, on the very front end of the process, and Tony was describing to whoever the reporter was.
It was Lori Walsh.
Okay,
Lori
sure.
Walsh. He was describing to Lori what he thought I would be looking for in a lieutenant governor. So I was very
interested in that.
Interested in this, and as I started smiling about it.
Yeah. I think he should be from Sioux Falls.
Exactly.
I think he should have a kid named Henry.
I read through his description. I said, "Well, it sounds like he's describing himself here."
Guess I was right.
Well, I appreciate you guys making the time and to come across from Sioux Falls so we could do this together in person. It means quite a lot to both of us and the staff here at HomeSlice. Thanks a lot for coming on, guys.
This is fun.
Anything we're missing?
I think it's about it.
No, that's not true.
Oh,
it's Larry's first time on the show.
It is.
Who's got the best burger in South Dakota? Everybody who comes on the show gets asked.
How about the best steak?
We'll take it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mad Mary's in Pierre.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. You had plenty of those, I assume.
Yep.
I'm an expert. This next steakhouse you're at, they're gonna be a little heated.
Yeah,
about this
you should endorse the steak. Yeah.
It's Governor Larry Rhoden and Lieutenant Governor Tony Venhuizen. Great episode. Thanks for being honest with your answers and candid with your time, gentlemen.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you guys very much. This has been South Dakota's most listened to political podcast with Jake in the East, Murdoch in the West. This is Dakota Town Hall.
We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Dakota Town Hall, South Dakota's most listened to political podcast. Episodes air every Friday on air and in your favorite podcast player. To request availability, please go to dakotatownhall.com. While we strive to make all of our content accurate, this show is recorded live. For corrections or threats, please visit dakotatownhall.com. In partnership and presented by HomeSlice Audio. For a full list of HomeSlice shows, go to homesliceaudio.com. Dakota Town Hall is produced and edited by Jacob Kerstad, and I'm Leslie Klein, Public Service Director. Our Promotions Director is Mitchell Stafford. Todd Holen is the National Sales Director, with special thanks to Brad, Shelley, Mitchell, Turley, Jordan, Tanya, Breezy, and both new and old Kifers on the revenue team. The HomeSlice cast is executive produced by Mark Houston. Dean Taylor and Oakley Ty handle production and scheduling. Scout Wheeler handles our content creation, and our website design is in the hands of Brenna Cooking Sherry. Brand and graphic design by Rob Henry and Ella Cervity. Our digital department is ran by Chris Hornick, along with Hannah Masters as our data analyst. Videography by Russ Danger Haddon. Brad Hyde handles the finger guns. Amber Clement is our project manager. Managing editor and executive producer Brad Murdoch Jurgensen. For booking and speaking info, please visit murdoch.media. Special thanks to our weekly guests and the entire staff at HomeSlice Audio. Hosted by Jake Schoenbeck in the East and Murdoch in the West. This is Dakota Town Hall, another HomeSlice Audio production.